You never expect the people you love the most to be the ones who destroy you. It's a glitch, isn't it? Something you read in books or see in movies, always happening to someone else. I certainly never thought it would happen to me. My life, for the longest time, felt like a quiet, sturdy house built on solid ground. And the main pillar, the very foundation of that house, was my sister, Sophia. Our story, like many, started with a gaping hole. Our parents gone too soon, a car accident that ripped through our childhoods like a cruel, sudden storm. I was 16, Sophia just 12. Overnight, I stopped being just a big sister. I became her everything. Her guardian, her confidant, her second mother, really. There was no questioning it. No debate. It was just how things were. I didn't think about my own dreams much back then. They just faded into the background, like old photographs. All that mattered was Sophia, making sure she ate, did her homework, felt loved, felt safe. I poured every ounce of my being into her, convinced that her happiness was my ultimate purpose. She was such a bright kid, full of life. Always sketching little fashion designs in her notebooks, talking about how she'd take over the world of haute couture someday. And I believed her. Every word. I worked 2 part-time jobs through college, scrimping and saving every penny. My own degree felt like a distant second priority. It was all about getting Sophia into that prestigious design school, the one she'd always dreamed of. While my friends were out partying, building their own lives, I was budgeting, taking extra shifts, researching scholarships for her. It wasn't a chore, not really. It felt like love. A deep, unconditional, almost fierce kind of love. She was my anchor in a world that had, for a time, felt adrift. She was my purpose. And she flourished. Got into that dream school, just like we planned. I was bursting with pride the day she got her acceptance letter. It felt like my victory too. A testament to all those late nights and skipped luxuries. Even then, she was, Sophia, a little self-absorbed maybe. Always a bit more focused on herself and her ambitions. But I just saw it as ambition. A drive inherited from our parents. I admired it even. I thought, well, that's just how creative people are, right? A little bit in their own world. I never saw it as a flaw, let alone a danger. I just loved her. Plain and simple. After she graduated, things seemed to settle into a comfortable rhythm. She landed a good job, started building her career. I, on the other hand, was still working a stable, but uninspiring, administrative job, saving up for, well, I wasn't even sure what anymore. Maybe a small apartment of my own finally. A little nest egg. My life felt predictable, secure. The kind of secure where you stop looking over your shoulder, where you assume good intentions from those closest to you. Especially family. Especially your sister, the one you raised. Then came David. Sophia met him at some high society event. He was everything I wasn't. Flashy, charming, from a ridiculously wealthy family. I had my reservations, honestly. Something about him felt too smooth, too perfect. But Sophia was smitten. And when she's smitten, she's all in. Within months, they were engaged. Another whirlwind. Another reason for me to be proud, right? My little sister, building this incredible life for herself. I was happy for her, truly. And I let myself believe that David, despite his slick exterior, was good for her. He made her happy. And if Sophia was happy, then I was happy. That's how it always worked with us. I saw myself as the unsung hero of our story, the quiet force behind Sophia's success. My reward wasn't public recognition or material wealth. It was her laughter, her achievements, the knowledge that I had kept her safe and given her a chance at a life our parents would have wanted for her. I was the rock, the constant, the one who always showed up. And in my world, that meant I was untouchable by those I loved. That was my biggest mistake, my blind spot. Because while I was busy being her safe harbor, the storm was already gathering, not on the horizon, but right inside our home, brewed by the very person I'd sacrificed everything for. Life, has a funny way of lulling you into a false sense of security. After Sophia and David got married, their lives just exploded. They moved into this ridiculously beautiful house, started hobnobbing with people whose names I only recognized from magazines. Sophia, my little sister, was living the fairy tale she'd always sketched in her notebooks, only bigger, grander, and I was genuinely happy for her. No jealousy. Just pure, unadulterated pride. I saw her thriving, and it felt like all those years of sacrifice had finally paid off. I still worked my steady, somewhat dull, admin job, but I was finally starting to dream a little for myself. Maybe take that art history course I'd always wanted. Save up for a small, cozy place. Just something for me. I was even thinking of finally taking a proper vacation, somewhere with actual beaches and no spreadsheets. Then, David started talking. Subtly at first, at family dinners, during casual visits. He'd mention investment opportunities, exclusive ventures, always with a wink and a smile, like he was sharing a secret known only to the truly successful. Sophia would chime in, her eyes sparkling. Oh, Clara, you have to hear about this. It's incredible. They painted a picture of quick, almost effortless wealth. They talked about projects in exotic places, a new tech startup, a chain of luxury boutiques, things that sounded far too glamorous for my quiet, predictable life. I was skeptical, of course. My years of carefully budgeting and saving had ingrained a healthy distrust of anything that promised too much too fast. It sounds risky, I remember saying once, my brow furrowed. David just laughed, a smooth, confident sound. Risky for the small-minded, Clara, but for those with vision, it's destiny. Sophia would then lean in, her voice hushed and earnest. Clara, this is it. Our chance. Your chance to stop working yourself to the bone. To finally live the life you deserve. After everything you've done for me. That was the hook, wasn't it? After everything you've done for me. It hit me right in the gut. All those years, all those sacrifices. Maybe this was my reward. Maybe Sophia, finally in a position of power and wealth, was trying to give back. It was exactly what I wanted to believe. She knew my deepest insecurities, my quiet yearning for something more than just scraping by. She knew how to play on my heartstrings even when strung by someone else's hand. The pressure mounted. Every conversation steered towards it. David would pull out glossy brochures, talk numbers that made my head spin. Sophia would share stories of friends who had become millionaires overnight, all thanks to David's insight. She'd tell me, Clara, you taught me to seize opportunities. This is the opportunity. Don't let it pass you by. She made it sound like I was letting her down if I didn't jump on board, like I was ungrateful for all her supposed generosity. I still had doubts, big ones. So, I did what any responsible person would do. I researched. I looked up David's company, the projects he mentioned. Everything looked legitimate on the surface. Glossy websites, impressive press releases. But of course, I didn't know how deep the rabbit hole went. I didn't know how easy it was to build an online facade. And I certainly didn't expect my own sister to be part of the deception. Just a small initial investment, David would say, to show commitment. And Sophia would add, it's a no-brainer, Clara. Think of it as a loan to yourself, with massive returns. You deserve this. We deserve this, together. That together was what broke me. It conjured images of us finally free of financial worries, enjoying life, just like our parents would have wanted. It felt like family. It felt like love. So, I sold my small retirement fund, liquidated my savings, even took out a small loan against my meager $401,000, something I swore I'd never touch. Every penny I had, every bit of security I'd painstakingly built over 2 decades, went into the golden opportunity. That's what David called it. Sophia was there, holding my hand, her eyes wide and earnest, as I signed the papers. This is it, Clara, our new beginning, she whispered, squeezing my hand. I remember feeling a strange mix of excitement and a tiny, almost imperceptible tremor of fear. But I pushed the fear down. She was my sister. She wouldn't betray me. For a few weeks, everything seemed fine. David sent me slick reports, showing impressive, though imaginary, gains. Sophia called often, gushing about our partnership, planning hypothetical luxury trips we'd take once the first payouts came through. I even started to let myself dream a little bigger. Maybe that small apartment would become a cozy house. Maybe that art history course would turn into a degree. The future, for the first time in a long time, felt expansive, full of possibility. Then, the emails stopped. The calls weren't returned. David's number went straight to voicemail. Sophia suddenly became too busy for calls, sending vague texts about unexpected delays. My stomach started to knot. That small tremor of fear grew into a full-blown earthquake. I drove to their mansion, the one they'd paraded as their success. The gates were locked, the house dark. Neighbors told me they'd left weeks ago, suddenly, quietly. No forwarding address. Just gone. My heart sank into my feet. The realization hit me like a physical blow. It wasn't just a bad investment. It was a scam. And Sophia, my sister, the one I had literally raised, the one who swore she'd never let anything bad happen to me, wasn't on it. She hadn't just stood by while I fell. She had pushed me, with a smile. And that, I realized, was a betrayal deeper than any financial loss. It was the complete obliteration of trust, of family, of everything I thought I knew about love. The silence of their empty mansion was a physical weight. It pressed down on me, heavy and suffocating. My phone, hot in my hand, showed Sophia's last text. So sorry, sweetie. So busy. Talk soon. Talk soon. It was a lie. Just like everything else. The golden opportunity was gone, and with it, every single penny I had. Not just my savings, but the little nest egg for my future. The dream of an art course, the hope of a proper home. All gone. Swallowed by a carefully constructed lie spun by my own sister and her husband. I don't remember driving home. It's all a blur of asphalt and choked back sobs. My apartment, once my sanctuary, now felt like a cruel joke. Every corner, every piece of furniture, whispered Sophia's name. Her photos, her laughter, the memories of a childhood spent dreaming together. It all felt tainted, poisoned. How could someone you loved so fiercely, someone you literally raised, do this to you? How could she look me in the eye, hug me, tell me she loved me, while orchestrating my financial ruin? The betrayal wasn't just about the money. It was about the utter shattering of my perception of family, of loyalty, of her. For days, I just existed. The world outside felt muted, distant. Eating was a chore, sleeping an impossible dream. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sophia's face. Not the one from childhood photos, But the one from that day I signed the papers earnest, bright, completely devoid of guilt. It made my stomach turn, a raw, visceral nausea that nothing could cure. Humiliation burned hotter than any anger. I felt so stupid, so incredibly naive. All those years I prided myself on being the strong, smart one, the responsible big sister. And in the end, I was just a mark, an easy target for the very person I protected. The phone rang constantly. Creditors, banks, automated messages reminding me of the loan I'd taken out. I ignored them all. What was the point? I had nothing left. No job, because I'd confidently told my boss I was leaving for this incredible venture. No savings. No home, really, because how could I afford the rent now? The walls of my small apartment felt like they were closing in on me. I'd pace from one room to the other, the air thick with despair. Every item I owned seemed to mock me, a testament to a life I no longer had. I remember standing in front of the mirror one morning, not recognizing the person staring back. My eyes were hollow, my skin pale, my shoulders hunched as if carrying an invisible burden. That was me. Clara, the protector, the rock, broken. And Sophia? She was probably sipping champagne on some private beach, laughing about the naive sister she'd fleeced. The thought sent a jolt of something cold and bitter through me. It wasn't just sadness anymore. It was a deep, corrosive rage, simmering beneath the surface of my despair. I tried to talk to a mutual friend, someone who knew both Sophia and me, thinking maybe they'd understand. Maybe they could offer a perspective. Sophia, the friend said, their voice dripping with disbelief. No, Clara, you must be mistaken. She'd never do anything like that. She loves you. It must be David. He probably misled her. The words were like a fresh stab wound. Even those who knew us couldn't comprehend the depth of Sophia's deceit. They saw the facade, the charming, ambitious young woman I had helped create. They didn't see the calculating mind underneath. That conversation pushed me further into isolation. I stopped answering calls, stopped checking emails. The world outside my small, now empty apartment felt like a threat. I couldn't trust anyone, not even my own judgment. If Sophia, my own blood, could do this, who else could? The fear was paralyzing. I spent hours staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every smile, every seemingly innocent comment Sophia had made about the opportunity. Each memory was a little shard of glass, twisting deeper into my heart. She had played me for a fool, and she had done it masterfully. The idea of starting over, of rebuilding, felt utterly impossible. How do you rebuild when the foundation has been shattered by the very person you built it for? How do you trust again when the person who should have been your unwavering ally turned out to be your worst enemy? I was adrift, alone in a vast, cold ocean, with no land in sight. The bitterness of betrayal was a taste that never left my tongue. It wasn't just a loss of money, it was a loss of self, a loss of identity, a loss of my entire past, now recontextualized as a series of naive sacrifices for a snake in the grass. I don't know how long I stayed in that dark place. Days blurred into weeks. The calls from creditors became more aggressive, the notices arriving in the mail more menacing. My savings account was empty, my lease almost up, and the thought of facing the world, of admitting my colossal failure, was more terrifying than anything. I felt like a ghost haunting my own life, invisible and utterly powerless. One afternoon, in a haze of despair, I started rummaging through old boxes, not looking for anything specific, just trying to distract myself from the suffocating silence. In the back of my closet, tucked away behind dusty photo albums and forgotten trinkets, I found it. A small, worn wooden box. My mother's. I hadn't opened it since we lost her. It was filled with little mementos, pressed flowers, a dried corsage from her wedding, a tiny, smooth stone she'd picked up on our last family vacation, and beneath it all, a stack of letters. Her letters. To me. I sat on the floor, the dust motes dancing in the single shaft of sunlight cutting through the window, and started to read. Her handwriting, elegant and flowing, was instantly familiar. She wrote about mundane things, funny anecdotes, but mostly, she wrote about strength, about picking yourself up when life knocked you down. My dearest Clara, one letter began. Never forget the resilience that runs in our blood. We bend, but we do not break. And even when the world feels cold and unjust, there is always a flicker of light, if you only look for it within yourself. Another letter, written after a particularly tough time when I was a teenager, spoke of choosing battles. Some fights, she wrote, are not worth your energy, but the fight for your truth, for your dignity, that is always a fight worth waging, no matter how small you feel. As I read, something shifted inside me. It wasn't a sudden burst of energy, but a slow thawing warmth. A faint echo of the woman I used to be, before the betrayal. My mother had always been my quiet pillar of strength, and even from beyond the grave, she was reminding me of who I was. The shame, the humiliation, the self-pity, they didn't vanish instantly, but they began to recede, replaced by a colder, harder emotion. Clarity. And then, rage. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about what Sophia had become. The person I'd sacrificed everything for, now a callous stranger, a predator. She hadn't just stolen my money. She'd stolen my peace, my future, and twisted the very meaning of family. And the thought of her and David living their lavish lives, unbothered, laughing about their naive mark, while I sat broken and destitute. It was unbearable. That's when the decision solidified. It wasn't a scream. It was a whisper, cold and determined, echoing my mother's words in my mind. We bend, but we do not break. I wouldn't just survive this. I would rise from it, and I wouldn't let them get away with it. Not like this. I wasn't thinking about revenge in a violent sense. No, that wasn't me. My mother's letters spoke of dignity, of truth, and their truth, the ugly, manipulative truth of what they had done, needed to see the light of day. Sophia thought she was so clever, so untouchable. She believed I was weak, that I would just fade away. She forgot who taught her to fight, who taught her resilience. She forgot the unwavering resolve that was a hallmark of our family, passed down through generations. The first step was to stop wallowing. I got up, showered, and looked at myself in the mirror again. This time, I didn't see a broken woman. I saw eyes that, despite the exhaustion, held a new, steely resolve. I saw a fighter, just awakening. I pulled up my old laptop, the one I'd almost sold. My mind, which had been so foggy, now felt sharp, focused. I remembered Sophia's old college projects, her penchant for meticulous research when she wanted something. I remembered David's boasts about his connections and how easily he could make things disappear. They thought they were invisible. They thought they had covered their tracks. But I knew Sophia's habits. I knew her arrogance. And I knew, deep down, that greed always leaves a trail. This wasn't about getting my money back. Not entirely. It was about principle. It was about justice. It was about ripping away their carefully crafted facade and exposing them for the vile, conniving people they truly were. It was about making sure no one else fell victim to their schemes. And it was about reclaiming my own narrative, proving to myself, and to them, that Clara was not to be underestimated. The game had just begun, and I was going to play it on my own terms. The shift from despair to determination wasn't a magic trick. It was a conscious effort. A daily battle against the bitterness still churning inside me. My mother's letters became my mantra. We bend, but we do not break. And the first step to not breaking, I realized, was to understand exactly how I'd been broken. My first move was to get my old job back. It wasn't glorious, but it was stable. It gave me a routine, a reason to get out of bed, and more importantly, access to a computer and an internet connection without draining my last few pennies. I started small, working evenings and weekends. My apartment felt less like a prison and more like a war room. I began by dissecting David's golden opportunity pitch. I remembered every glossy brochure, every buzzword, every inflated number he'd spouted. He was flashy, yes, but also lazy. People like him, they think they're too smart to leave a trail, but arrogance is a blind spot. I started searching for the names of the companies he'd mentioned, the investors he'd supposedly partnered with. Turns out, many of them were shell corporations, registered in obscure places, with ever-shifting directors. It was a labyrinth, but I had nothing but time and a burning need for answers. My years of managing complex administrative tasks, of organizing chaotic schedules, suddenly felt like training for this. I was meticulous. I created spreadsheets, timelines, connecting every little detail. I learned about financial regulations, offshore accounts, white-collar crime. It was a crash course in a world I never knew existed. A dark mirror to the glittering life Sophia and David now flaunted. The trickiest part was getting anything on Sophia. She was the family. My sister. I couldn't believe, truly believe, that she was fully in on it. Not just misguided, but the evidence was mounting. Her sudden silence, the locked gates of their house, the way she'd avoided my calls. It painted a grim picture. I remembered her casual comments, her earnest pleas for me to join the opportunity, her eyes, so wide and innocent when I signed those papers. It was a performance. A masterful, cruel performance. I started digging into her digital footprint. Sophia wasn't as careful as David. She loved social media, loved showing off her new life. I scrolled through her old posts, looking for any clue. I found photos of lavish parties, trips, expensive gifts. And then I saw it. A tiny detail in the background of one of her early posts, a reflection in a mirror, a document on a table. It was a partial view of what looked like a legal paper, something about a company registration. It was blurry, but enough to give me a name. A real company, not a shell. A legitimate business they had used briefly before discarding it. That was my first real lead. A breadcrumb. I followed it carefully, patiently. It led me to public records, old news articles about minor scandals, and eventually, to a low-level former employee who had been laid off unfairly. This person, bitter and seeking their own quiet justice, was willing to talk anonymously. For a small fee. They provided me with initial internal documents, emails, meeting minutes that sketched out the early stages of David's schemes. And there, buried in the emails, were exchanges that proved Sophia's direct involvement. Not just naive participation, but active collaboration. Discussions about how to handle certain investors, me specifically. Lines like, "Clara's so easy. She'll trust anything you say if it sounds like it's for her benefit." The words hit me like a physical blow. Worse than any punch. It wasn't a mistake. It was planned. From the beginning. My sister, the one I'd given my life for, had orchestrated my downfall with a smile. The pain was still there, but now it was sharper, colder, fueled by an icy clarity. This wasn't just about getting justice. It was about exposing the true monster she'd become. I continued to build my dossier. I didn't approach Sophia or David. I didn't even hint that I knew anything. I was invisible, a ghost in their perfect world, watching, gathering, waiting. I backed up everything onto multiple external drives, hid them in different locations. My lawyer, a distant cousin I'd reached out to, the only family member I felt I could trust now, was initially skeptical. "It's just a bunch of digital crumbs, Clara. We need something solid." But I was tenacious. I started tracking their current movements, their new public appearances. They were always at galas, charity events. I'd show up, blend into the background, observing. I'd see Sophia's radiant smile, David's confident swagger, their perfect public facade. And I'd feel that cold rage, the certainty that their fake smiles would eventually crack. I even managed to record a public speech David made, bragging about his new ventures, using eerily similar language to the scam he'd pulled on me. It wasn't direct proof, but it showed a pattern. My most daring move came when I discovered David had a weakness. His old assistant. She'd been privy to a lot, had quit suddenly, clearly disgruntled. It took months of careful, anonymous communication, building trust, hinting at what I knew. Eventually, she cracked. She hated David, but she also feared him. I offered her something priceless: anonymity and a chance for closure. She provided me with printouts of actual bank statements, showing transfers from the investment accounts directly into David and Sophia's personal offshore accounts. And then, the ultimate proof, an email from Sophia to David, outlining the next phase of our plan, specifically mentioning the need to eliminate loose ends, including me. That email was the smoking gun. It was cold, calculated, and undeniable. It confirmed everything. Sophia wasn't just a pawn. She was an active player. The tears finally came then, hot and stinging, but they were tears of sorrow, not despair. Sorrow for the sister I'd lost, the one who never truly existed. And then, a surge of power. I had it, everything I needed. The patient, silent hunt was over. Now, it was time for them to face the consequences. They had no idea what was coming. The dossier was complete. A thick, damning compilation of emails, bank statements, recorded conversations, and Sophia's own incriminating messages. It was a testament to months of sleepless nights, quiet determination, and a rage so cold it became my fuel. My lawyer, once skeptical, was now grimly impressed. "Clara," he said, tapping the folder, "this is more than enough. They won't know what hit them." And they truly didn't. Sophia and David were at the peak of their new, fraudulent empire. Their names were in society columns, their faces plastered across lifestyle magazines. They were throwing a massive, exclusive charity gala ostensibly for a children's hospital, but really, just another lavish display of their ill-gotten wealth. I knew about it, of course. Sophia had, with an almost unbelievable audacity, sent me an invitation. Probably a cruel joke, a reminder of how far I'd fallen, and how high she'd climbed. That invitation became my stage. I didn't crash the party. I didn't make a scene myself. That wasn't my style. My mother's words echoed truth, dignity. I chose a different path. While Sophia and David were basking in the limelight, greeting politicians and celebrities, a carefully orchestrated set of events was unfolding. My lawyer had already delivered the full dossier to the Financial Crimes Unit. Simultaneously, a reputable investigative journalism team, whom I'd secretly contacted and provided with a sanitized version of the key evidence, was ready to break the story. The first tremor hit during David's grand speech, where he was praising Sophia as his brilliant partner in all their ventures. Suddenly, whispers started circulating, phones lit up, people were looking down at their screens, then up at Sophia and David, their expressions shifting from admiration to confusion, then to outright disgust. The news alerts had gone live. The articles, meticulously researched and backed by my irrefutable evidence, exposed their entire scheme: the shell corporations, the fraudulent investments, the countless victims, and Sophia's central manipulative role. I wasn't there to see their faces, but I imagined it. The initial bewilderment, the dawning horror, the forced smiles crumbling under the weight of public humiliation. Their names, once synonymous with success, now screamed fraudsters. Within minutes, the gala became a chaotic scene. Guests, realizing they'd been associated with criminals, started to leave in droves. Flashes of cameras, but not for glitz and glamour, for the unfolding scandal. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Arrests were made. Assets were frozen. Their perfect, glittering world imploded. Sophia and David were dragged from their mansion in handcuffs, their faces stark with disbelief, then fury. There was no more charming fraud, just raw, desperate anger. The very media that had once celebrated them now tore them apart. Their influential friends vanished overnight. Their names became a byword for greed and deception. I didn't get my money back immediately. The legal process for restitution is long and arduous, especially with offshore accounts. But that wasn't my primary goal anymore. My goal was justice, moral vengeance. And seeing them stripped bare, their carefully constructed lives crumbling around them, was more satisfying than any sum of money could be. They were exposed. Their reputation, their most prized possession, was utterly destroyed. And the world knew their truth. With the arrests, A strange kind of peace settled over me. The knot in my stomach finally began to loosen. The ghost haunting my life started to fade. I realized I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a survivor, a fighter who had chosen intelligence over emotion, strategy over blind rage. I started rebuilding, quietly, methodically. I found a better job, one that valued my meticulous nature and problem-solving skills. I moved into a small, sunlit apartment, painting the walls a cheerful yellow as symbol of a new beginning, bright and hopeful. I reconnected with old friends who had patiently waited for me to re-emerge, explaining only that I'd been through a tough family situation. The full, brutal truth was mine to keep, a hard-won lesson. Slowly, gently, I started to explore those old dreams. I enrolled in an online art history course. I started sketching again, not fashion designs like Sophia, but landscapes, abstract shapes, things that reflected the complex beauty and brokenness of the world. I learned to trust again, but with caution, with discernment. The girl who gave her trust away freely was gone. In her place was a woman who listened differently, observed more, and valued genuine connection above any superficial glamour. Years passed. Sophia and David received heavy sentences. The details occasionally popped up in the news, but the impact on my daily life lessened with each passing day. Sophia, I heard, never truly accepted responsibility, always blaming David or the system, or naive investors like me. But her denial didn't matter anymore. Her choices had consequences, and she was living them. My life, on the other hand, flourished. I started my own small consulting business, helping people navigate complex paperwork and financial hurdles, using the very skills I'd sharpened during my personal battle. It was ironic, in a way, turning my trauma into purpose. I found love again. A quiet, stable love built on mutual respect and unwavering honesty. Sometimes when I look out my window at the city lights, a faint echo of the past might surface. A brief memory of Sophia's laugh, or a pang for the sister I once had, or thought I had. But it's fleeting, because the Clara who emerges now is stronger, wiser, and profoundly free. Free from the weight of sacrifice, free from the chains of unearned loyalty, and free from the shadows of betrayal. My house is no longer built on shaky ground. It stands firm, a testament to resilience, integrity, and the quiet power of truth.